left off, we were talking about Eastern philosophies, and I was talking about Hongzi and Jixue, which is Confucianism. And what I said was the kernel, that's kernel with a K, not like a kernel, but kernel like the core or the seed of Confucianism is what's called the Zhangming, the important relationships. Literally, this means the Ming is a name. Zhang is to rectify or to correct. So I think it better would be like the recalibration of responsibilities, I think would be the best English translation of it. But usually you'll see it as rectification of names. Name is a job. The 5 relationships of the Zhangming: father, son, elder brother, younger brother, and these are couched in masculine terms, but you could divorce them from their masculine particularities and they still work. So you've got father, son, elder brother, younger brother, husband and wife, elders in the sense of all the old people, and youth, and then you've got the ruler subject. You've got these 5 relationships, and Kongzi says society would function best if everybody would just perform these particular roles correctly. If these and especially the father-son relationship is the most important, because he sees the father-son relationship as the basis of really all other relationships. There's always a position of superiority, if you will, and inferiority. Father, the superior; son, the inferior, not in the sense of more or less power, but in terms of responsibility. But everybody equally has the same amount of duty to perform. The father, of course, is to love the son, but the son is to exhibit this virtue of filial piety. And for Kongzi, this is the most important notion. Qiao, right? Filial piety. But what you ought to do is exhibit complete devotion to your parents. And I know I gave the example to the Thursday class that there's this section in the Lunye, the Analects, where this king brags, prince, duke, brags to Kongzi, Confucius. But guess what? In my kingdom, I have kids turn in their parents for committing crimes. And Kongzi looks down on this. Says it would be better if families were united together and children honored and loved and devoted themselves to their parents. What you've done is a complete corruption of the natural order of things. Because that's what Kongzi stresses. Kongzi goes out of his way to say, I'm not trying to come up with anything new here. This is the way things were in the ancient times, when the earth was in harmony with heaven, Tian. And why have things gotten off track since then? Why are there wars and all kinds of terrible things? Well, for Plato, what was it? Because of the body. For Kongzi here, it's because we have disregarded the way that relationships ought to be. And if we restore those, society itself will be restored. And we will all benefit as a result. And there's some other things that I want to say about Kongzi as well that he stresses. So for Kongzi, if you will, the virtues for him, and really, let's talk about this notion of virtue, bei. That means virtue. And the virtues for him are these 3. Zhen is the notion of, it's usually translated as humaneness. I don't like that, but we'll go with that. What this means is generally the way you should treat other people. So if you look at, even though this is all mitigated by the Zhangming, rectification of names, if you look at the list, what the list boils down to is this. And we see this in a lot of different moral codes throughout the planet Earth. Generally speaking, Kongzi says it in 2 ways. It's called the golden rule and the silver rule. 1, treat others how you want to be treated. 2, don't treat others how you would not want to be treated. Now again, you see that in other ethics as well. But here it is in Kongzi, this notion that our default position should be treat other people well. Even if, according to that Zhangming, those 5 relationships, even if you're in the superior position, if you're the father, you're the elder brother, the elder in the sense of older person, the husband, the ruler, that doesn't mean, this other person is something for me to use, misuse, and abuse. No. That person is under your care. And it is really your most important duty to treat them as they are supposed to be treated. That's true for Kongzi. So what's ritual then? Well, if we're to treat everybody properly in a certain way, and that's a very important aspect of Kongzi's philosophy, the next element that's important is the notion of li, ritual. Nothing is really superficial. when I say nothing, I mean our daily activities. Like especially, we tend to think of things as our everyday stuff. We even might use the word mundane, literally related to the Latin, like earthly, mundo. Boring, dirty. Everything that you do is important. So treat it with importance. Now, it's not that a Westerner can't have this attitude. I know a lot of people in the military who talk about, the most important thing you can do today is make your bed. No, I don't. But I've seen that attitude exhibited. Like, start early. Make sure you have a particular kind of discipline. Kongsi would kind of agree with that. You should have a discipline for everything. Nothing is superficial. It's not just having like a ritual. Like, you might have things that you do before you get ready in the morning. It's not merely that. It's to treat it with a certain kind of dignity. The very simple things that we do every day, in many ways, are the most important things we do. It's not the big stuff. Really, you spend more time doing these little everyday things than you will any sort of major thing you could possibly do. Or even, say, a military commander. Yeah, they might have a great victory a few times in their life, but really how they discipline themselves on a daily basis is how they get to that in the first place. So stressing the everydayness and the importance of those everyday things is what he stresses here, in this notion of ritual. So that's why even little things like how you greet people, like to what degree you bow, you might think, oh, those things don't matter. For Kongsi, they do, because those little things are very, very important. And then justice, yi. Now, justice here in Kongsi's sense means this. It's not merely, and this is moral proclivity. I could also translate it that way. What do I mean by that? You shouldn't just want to do good to check off a list. Now, I've done that before. Did you ever want to, like, your parents to catch you, like, doing good? For what reason? Reward me! Look, I made all A's, Mom and Dad, where's my money? But here, it's not just to do good to be impressive. Look what I can do. It's that you do good for the sake of doing good itself. Not for fear of punishment, not to check off a list, not to be seen, but you want to do good for the sake of doing good. Now, and you maybe have been here before. Have you ever done the right thing even though you didn't want to do the right thing? Oh, this is really hard for me to do, but I gotta do the right thing. Kongsi says, thanks for playing, but you should want to do it. It shouldn't be a struggle for you. You should cultivate. Now, if you're working on it right now, that means you're a work in progress. But what we should ultimately want to do is that the desire should automatically be there. It shouldn't be something that you struggle against. Instead of, oh, I don't want to get up today, but I've got to because I got to go to work. And want to wake up. I just say that as a little everyday thing. Okay, things like that shouldn't be a struggle. That should be your default position. Well, like I said, and he would acknowledge these are not things that you're born with knowing how to do. These are things that have to be cultivated. Do that. So that's introduction to Kongsi. Let's move on now to Daojia. So Taoism. What is Taoism? The principal figure associated with Taoism is Lao Tzu. We don't really have too much on him. We don't even really know if he really existed. But Taoism is associated with him as a figure. The Taoist texts, like the Tao Te Ching, have him as their author, but they're probably actually collections of texts that developed over time. So, what is this about? Well, has anyone ever heard of the Tao Te Ching? Yeah. Okay, so we've got a couple. That's all right. Like that's like the religious text of Taoism. Okay, so for Christians it would be the Bible, Old and New Testaments. For Muslims it would be Al-Quran. For Jews it would be the Tanakh, especially the Torah. Taoism, it would be primarily the Tao Te Ching, which begins Dao ke Dao, Fei Chang Dao. The Tao that can be talked about is not the Tao. Whoa. Ming ke Ming, Fei Chang Ming. The name that can be named, there's that Ming again, like Zhang Ming. The name that can be named is not the name. So already, right, if you open up the Tao Te Ching to chapter 1, verse 1, that's what you'll see, or some translations of it. That you can't, this thing called the Tao that we're talking about, you can't really define it. It's ineffable. It's beyond the understanding. What's beyond the understanding? The Tao. What's the Tao? Well, the translation for it in English would be the way. You'd say, really, what is Taoism? Wayism. Great. The way of what? Well, really, the way of nature. if I may. It's not in the name, but that's really what's going on here. There's a sense in which Taoism is a talk about the inexplicable, the unexplainable. It just is. And whereas Kongzi, Confucius, what he did was he looked at the past and said, how are things in ancient times? How do they get things right? We should look at that as our model. Taoism, whether it be Lao Tzu or others like Chuang-Tzu, although he wouldn't have called himself a Taoist, Chuang-Tzu. Instead of looking at just the past and ancient societies, what were the relationships they got right? Here there's a looking at nature itself. Look at nature. And what's it like? And there's some conclusions that can be drawn from looking at nature. And there's all kinds of things that you can observe in nature that are pretty awesome. But you can, obviously, heavenly bodies, we can observe the sun, the moon, the stars, the clouds, stuff around us, the trees, the wind, water flowing. And that's why there actually is, if you use the word science here, Westerners are going to get very upset, but there is a Taoist tradition of science. There's a Western tendency to say, science was invented by Europeans in the 1600s. No. There was certainly a developmental, revolutionary process there where some things fed together that were awesome. But there are other traditions of knowledges, and even technologies like we see here, okay, in the Taoist tradition in China. So what you see here is looking around at nature. Well, how does nature do what it does? Like the wind, like there's the moon. How does it float across the heavens? Now, it's in motion, we're in motion, the solar system's in motion, the galaxy's in motion. Yeah, but okay, cool. How does the moon move? Like, is it exerting itself? Oh, it's hard for me to move across the sky. Move into next shadow form. How does it do what it does? Or water flowing down a river. Like, is it exerting itself? I don't mean just as it getting tired. But does it have to make itself move? Does it have self-motion? How does it do what it does? Animals, this is easy to watch. Your puppy walks across the room. Okay, yep, I could see it happen. Yes, it's exerting itself. But is it exerting itself in growth? Do plants need to do something in order to grow? Are they willing it? Must get taller. Well, do you even? I remember being a little kid, looking up at my parents going, they're tall. I want to be tall one day. Now I dwarf both my parents. I'm not even that tall. I dwarf both my parents. It's not that great. I wish I could have gone and taken that wish back for something else. Okay? But, did I have to exert myself in order to grow? No. It just kind of happened. By nature. In nature. So there's a sense in which nature just does what it does without even having to try. And that's what Taoism's all about. So much of our frustration comes from the fact that we don't do that. Now, this kind of reminds me of Stoicism as well. Okay, Taoism. They're not identical. In fact, Taoism comes way before Stoicism. But there's a sense in which be like nature. For Stoicism, it's don't let your emotions get in the way because they corrupt your knowledge of the world. Here, the focus is be like nature. But the results end up being similar. Be like nature. Flow like nature. In fact, now there's another thread here that's going to come into contact with it too. Many martial arts traditions have their origins in Taoism. The most Taoist one would be what's called Tai Chi. In fact, the symbol of Taoism is the Tai Chi, which most people mislabel. What's that? Yin Yang. Nope, that's the Tai Chi. But yeah, we call it yin. You're fine. We call it yin yang. Okay, that's not the symbol. The concepts of yin and yang, which are Taoist notions, are represented in the symbol. And usually it's misinterpreted too. Like, that means there's goodness and badness in all of us. That has nothing to do with this. Okay? Sometimes I see it on little karate uniforms. But it's a symbol of Taoism, just as the crescent moon might be the symbol of Islam, or the Star of David is the symbol of Judaism, or the cross, or a fish, ichthus, might be a symbol of Christianity. That's a symbol of Taoism. Which is it religious? Well, depends on who you ask. It's the way. We act like nature. Emulate nature. Nature doesn't try. The moon doesn't do that thing, I gotta get up today, I gotta go across the sky. It doesn't have to. Nothing in nature struggles. Now we might see animals struggling, oh no, something happened. But so much just happens automatically without it having to have the will to do it. How does this work? Well, because of the nature of nature. The Tao is the way things are. And day, which is virtue, is nature, the way being applied. Our problem is that nature itself, when it's just doing what it's supposed to be doing, goes freely. Actually, he mentions these words in the Tao Te Ching. Something as it isness. As it is, just be. Not just do it, just be. There is no word for to be in Chinese. So there's no Chinese philosophy on be. And Wu Wei means do without doing. Just be Zeran, be as something as it is, and Wu Wei, do without doing. Our problem is, again, nature just says everything kind of automatically, just flows. All our problems come from us wanting to do stuff. This kind of sounds like Buddha now. I was talking about Buddha last time. Where do our problems come from? Desire. Dukkha, we want to do things. And our frustrations come from that. It's not the same thing, but that's why there is going to be a Taoism and Buddhism are going to link up. Chinese Buddhism is very Buddhist, Taoist, and Confucian. All these things kind of sync up in various ways. When we want things to go our way, often we're going against nature. Stop doing that. That's what's being disruptive. It's not going against the roles, like Kongzi said. It's going against nature. Don't do that. Just be. The waterfall doesn't need to be told, you need to flow today. I don't feel like flowing. It just does it. The sun doesn't need to be told to shine. It just shines. Be like that. Just do. Don't try to do. Just do. That's Wu Wei. Don't try, just do. Don't try at all. You shouldn't have to. Things should just happen automatically, like they do in nature. Be like the waterfall. It flows. It doesn't have to be told to. It doesn't have to say, I just need to start flowing today, whatever. It just does it. And this is the indicative of the Taoist school of thought. I think that's all I want to say about it for now. Next school that I want to go over. Mochia, or Moism, of which our principal figure is Mo-Tzu, who we do know existed. What's he all about? So Socrates living about the exact same time, different parts of the world. They give you an idea of where we are. So everything that we've done before, like what I was saying about Confucianism and Taoism, its earliest forms go back to the same time as the pre-Socratics. So that's where we are. So just like, again, different part of the world, further back. So what does he say? Pretty much, if Confucius said it, it's wrong. And especially the Confucians. Everything is those 5 relationships. Because you know what's wrong with that? What happens is, in Mo-Tzu's view, it overemphasizes those relationships, which means people just do this thing. And this happens in various traditions where there are specific mandates that people have to follow. People just say, okay, how can I do this as efficiently as possible? But efficiency does this thing where we narrow, we go, oh, I did what I needed to do, I'm good. And that's exactly what Mo-Tzu says about Confucianism. You focus so much on those relationships, you go, I'm good. Well, what happens when you meet someone not on the list? They're not my father, they're not my son. They're not my elder brother, they're not my younger brother. They're not my husband or my wife. What do I do now? You don't owe them anything. Hey, help me. I came from the next village, it was burned. Everything's gone, everybody's dead, I survived. Can you help? Not my problem. You're not on my list. On the Zheng Ming. Now that's not, remember Kongzi said, you should be treating everybody with a certain kind of dignity. But that kind of falls off, where like, you're not my problem. It might be your problem when those invaders come over the next hill and come to destroy you. So Mo-Tzu says, here's how we should treat people, not like following a list. How should I treat my father? How should I treat my son? How should I treat, you know what you should do? This. Jiang Ai. Which can be translated as universal or indiscriminate. I like that. Indiscriminate love. Treat everybody the same. Yeah, everybody's equal. So you don't have to have to think about like, wait a minute, this person's my son, I need to treat them with a particular set of rules, and this is my wife, I need to treat them in a particular kind of way. This is my ruler, I need to treat everybody the same. Everybody. You don't have to, like, wait, you are my second cousin 3 times removed. Hang on. I'll have to get back to you. I don't know how to treat you right now. I'll have to, consult the Confucian analects to just treat everybody the same. And that means with the same basic dignity. That doesn't mean, well, I guess I treat everybody like they're my spouse now. No. With the same kind of dignity. Generally. Indiscriminately. Love that does not discriminate. No, it's those people. Or that kind of, I treat everyone the same. Regardless of whether they're from your village, your town, your people, or not. Tian, that same heaven, Mozi says, is impartial. It doesn't have like a favorite group of people. It's not just us Chinese or our particular ethnicity. So we ought to treat everyone the same because the heavens deal with everyone the same. This is a quote from, I'm not going to read the whole thing, from the total of, this happens with a lot of Chinese authors, the totality of Mozi's works is called the Mozi. He says this: if everyone in the world will love universally, indiscriminately, Jian'ai, states not attacking one another, houses not disturbing one another, thieves and robbers becoming extinct, emperors and ministers, fathers and sons, all being affectionate and filial, if all this comes to pass, the world will be orderly. Therefore, how can the wise man who has charge of governing the empire fail to restrain hate and encourage love? So when there is universal love, the world will be orderly, and when there is mutual hate in the world, it will be disorderly. So he's saying that, like, all that stuff, what that does, the Confucian alignment, it gets people to think in a really almost like groupthink kinds of terms. Like, I've got my family, my clan, my tribe, my people. You're not on the list, go away. And it makes people end up having enmity towards one another. Everybody just loves each other. We're all on the same team here, is what Mozi is saying. We're all the same. If we have that attitude, then the world will be orderly. So he's going after the same kind of thing that Proclivity was going for. How can we make the world a better place? Like, how can we get rid of things like war and stuff? For Confucius, it was just get everybody to follow the exact relationships the way they're supposed to, and everything will get back in alignment. But he's saying, no, it's treat everybody the same, and then that consequence will happen. Then we'll get everything back. The world will be orderly if we just did this. Now, Mozi goes into even more detail by doing things like challenging the notion of war, even. And Mozi is a pacifist. He says, everybody knows murder is wrong. We all know it. We have exceptions that we say, like, I was doing it in self-defense, or things like that. And he's like, and that's fine. But we know murder when we see it, where you kill people for no reason, or they don't deserve it. That's murder. It's different from execution. It's different from self-defense. Murder, we all know it's bad. We all say don't do it. But how come you put people in costumes and put them in a group together and send them against another group and you kill those people? You're like, yay! And that's called warfare. Why is it when they dress up and the government tells them to do it, it's fine. But if you kill your neighbor yourself, you're in trouble. We know it's wrong. Therefore, warfare is wrong for the same reason, especially when it's not self-defense. He has different feelings about self-defensive war. If you're fighting to defend yourself, that's one thing. Even whether you're doing that as an individual or you're doing that in the army for your people. But if you're in warfare going like, hey, the next kingdom over has cool stuff, let's kill them all and take it. That's murder. It is. And thievery. And you know it's wrong, but somehow when you play dress up in your military costume, it's no longer murder. It's because you're deceiving yourselves. Get it together. And he says that in a book that's translated as Against Offensive War. That's all I want to say about Mozi, I think, and Moism for our purposes here. This one is called in English Neo-Confucianism. Now, anytime you see something historical with the word neo in front of it, Neoplatonism, Neoclassicalism, it means that somebody very recently decided to call this thing the new version of something that already happened. So just from looking at it, what would Neo-Confucianism be? Oh, that's the new Confucianism. Yeah, okay. What does that mean? So there was Confucian, Zhang Ming, this is, and here's what it is. And in fact, I'm going to give you the transliterated. Song Ming Liqie. See the word, I mean, even looking at the translation, anybody, you see the word Confucius hiding in there anywhere? Nope. Really what this means, like, this is what they call in English, Neo-Confucianism, but literally this means the teaching or the school or the doctrines of the Song-Ming, which are a dynasty that ruled China in the Middle Ages. So really, it's the Song-Ming teachings, as opposed to, say, the Han Dynasty or others, of which one of the principal characters is Zhu Jun. So Neo-Confucianism is kind of a Confucian Taoism. It's a mixture of those first two schools that I talked about. So whereas Confucianism was looking at those relationships and saying, to fix the world, we need to go back and do that. And Taoism was saying, we need to look at nature to fix the world. We should do that. Neo-Confucianism, it really should be called like Dao-Confucianism or something like that, puts them all together. And so it's a mixture of Taoism and Confucianism. Not Moism, because that guy, he hated Confucius, so he's not it. Maybe a little pepperings of Buddhism in here too. And it's also very mystical. The perfect mixture of Taoism and Confucianism. All right, because Confucius said, exert yourself, like follow these relationships. But the Taoist said, remember, don't exert, let things flow. There he just said, yeah, let it be both. If you exert yourself and you do what you want, you do what you need to do, great. If you're able to do it without having to try, also great. Oh, interesting. So I both try and not try. Yeah, exactly, in right amounts. In right amounts. It just works out. Be the kind of person where things just work out. Be the kind of person that doesn't go after stuff. Doesn't acquire wealth. If you've got it, great. It's because, this reminds me of Stoicism too. If you've come into great wealth, awesome. It's because nature kind of flowed you into it. So there's a sense in which, be like nature and follow the flow, but there's a sense in which there's almost a great mystery to figuring out how we flow into nature, how we flow into the particular stream of our own life. And that's the mystical element. Another aspect of that mystical element that I don't want to get into, the diagram of the actual Tai Chi Tu, which is huge. Like the original Yin Yang, it's a huge diagram. It almost looks like a flow chart that you have to unfold, demonstrating what? Demonstrating how things fit together. So yes, there are these ideas of yin and yang. Yang are all sort of the positions that exist in reality, things like heat, warmth, light. And on the other hand, yin are all these privations, the lack of something, cold, darkness. And all that's saying here is this diagram, all things, both positive things and negative. Negative not in the sense of bad, negative like darkness. I know in the West we think of darkness bad, but like turn the lights off. It's not bad. It's just different, the lack of something. All things that are and things that are not are all part of in the universe itself. And that line there is showing that these things are interconnected. It is not, you have two wolves inside you, which one will you feed? It's not that. This circle on the outside is all in reality itself. It all fits together. That's all this is saying. That everything you can think of in reality is part of a greater whole. That's it. It's not two sides in conflict. That's Manichaeism again. That's what that is. And it's really the Neo-Confucian school that develops this concept. So I know I meant it starts with Taoism, but really it's Neo-Confucianism that takes this idea and runs with it. Okay, for the far eastern stuff, that's it on this.